leaving out?
Father of two. I'm a father of two, so that's why I'm always tired and falling asleep on the couch. So that's why that's what I do best. Not during the day when I'm supposed to be watching the kids. That's what I do best.
So let me, and for those of you who don't know me, my name's Amanda Wick. I met Stephen when I was at Chainalysis. I used to be their chief of legal affairs. I see some Chain people floating around. Prior to that, I was at DOJ. I was a prosecutor, and then I was at FinCEN for a little bit. I left Chain and went to work on the Hill for a year. And then I recently started a nonprofit that I'm like so passionate about. Because when I left government and went to Chainalysis, I just saw women in tech, and especially in crypto and blockchain, not treated the same way as men, and not necessarily the most inclusive industry. Sometimes not intentionally, just sometimes like remnants of traditional finance that kind of rolled over into a culture of, we'll say, unintentional exclusion on its good days, and some days on its worst days, intentional exclusion, which we're trying to change. So the association is for women and male allies that are in the crypto, blockchain, and Web3 industries who want to network with other professionals, who want to build a global network of folks who are in the industry, and also who want to advocate for greater inclusion of women. Like, there's definitely an advocacy aspect to it. So I want to say welcome, everyone. Stephen and I are extremely, we are extremely happy to have you. Yes, some of you are, I guess, like right under us, which is fantastic. If you're in this little like love clump that's below us. So let me explain what's going to happen today, just so that you guys know, because this platform is new, both for Stephen and I. We're extremely excited to use it. Our association, being global, is always looking for ways to create networking opportunities that are truly global, that are also low cost, because most of us can't afford to pop on a flight to Singapore for, an evening of networking. Hashtag I wish I had that life. So this platform gives us the chance to try to organically network. And so essentially what will happen is Stephen and I will present and we'll talk about a couple of topics just to kind of like throw some things out there for consideration. And then what you'll see kind of floating around, in addition to all the lovely people out there, are these little circles that are called meeting spots. And these meeting spots are titled with months. And those months are just an easy way to kind of guide people. After Stephen and I are done, we're going to break up into groups, hopefully, roughly, if we can keep it to like 6 to 8 people, maybe like 9 or 10 on like the most. But 6 to 8 people is like that sweet spot. So you'll go to your birth month. That's just an easy way to kind of like divide people up. If you get in there and you're like, oh, all these Virgos be crazy, like just amble to another group. I'm a Virgo, so I can say that. But the point is we'll do something called facilitated networking, where in your small groups, Stephen and I will give you some questions to answer. And then you'll go around, you'll introduce yourselves, and you'll answer the questions that we give you. And you can talk amongst yourselves. It's not like you can't talk to each other, but it just gives you a starting point. So you're not kind of doing that awkward, like, so where do you live and how's the weather there kind of thing, right? Which a lot of us kind of don't necessarily like, kind of like the chit-chatty kind of networking. So we do in the association what's called facilitated networking. And basically that means we give you some questions to kind of get the conversation going. So I'm going to turn it over to Stephen, who, because he's always more prepared than I, prepared this like excellent list of like talking points, for lack of a better word. And we're just going to chat. But what I would say is if you guys have questions, if there's anything that we can address, I would love for you to throw them in the chat. I believe there's also a direct chat function. So if you get into the like love clump below, where like all these people are kind of like building like a little purple love monster, if you join that group, I believe you can send Stephen and I direct messages. If you'd feel more comfortably messaging us privately, totally okay. We'd love it if you just threw it in the chat, because odds are if you have a question, everybody has that question. So if you're comfortable, please feel free to throw it in the chat. And if not, you can jump into the love clump where we are and just direct message us. Because I'm not sure if you can direct message from outside the clump.
You might be. Is just, you might be. I'm not 100% sure.
We're not sure. So if you can't, just jump into the love clump and then you can direct message us, no problem. So I will turn it over to Stephen. The clump is full. Okay. So what I would say is people, okay, I can hover your face and there's a chat bubble thing. Oh, perfect. Okay, God love Clark Flintbar, who's one of the most brilliant people I know. Who apparently, if you hover over my face, there's a chat bubble thing and you can direct message me, I believe. So, yay, Clark. Okay, wonderful. Okay, great. So we'll start the conversation going. And if you guys have questions, jump in. But we want it to be fun. We want it to be interactive. That is what Toucan is all about.
Yeah, and I'll try and be quick. And shout out to Anna, who told me that my mic was targeted at the wrong device. So that's awesome. I hope I sound a lot better now. I love clumps. I love that. I think Toucan should like kind of like how Chainalysis came up with like the hops thing. Love humps can be Toucan's thing of all the little love lumps that we have here. So, Amanda, I just want to ask you a couple quick questions, maybe 10, 15 minutes, because I really want to get into the networking. I don't think we're going to have anyone in these chats that aren't going to be interacting. We have some really great talkers and speakers here, so we're encouraging you speakers to, when you get into a group, really facilitate the conversation. So, I was on a couple women calls today, obviously International Women's Day, and I think one thing I've heard a lot of is like, just be yourself, just be authentic. I've been in a lot of groups of masterminds with a lot of women. I think it's like me saying, hey, if you want to get muscles, like work out and don't eat crap all day. But at the end of the day, we love pizza and we'd rather watch Netflix than walk around the block. So it's easier said than done. And I feel
I'm so glad somebody admits that. I hate the people who are like, no, I'd much rather work out and only drink protein. And I'm like, you're a liar and you're going to hell.
I have extremes of both. Like I have my protein shake and then I polish off a box of Costco cookies. But I think one of the things that I've noticed is that, maybe women and, just even that feminine energy is that they tend to be people pleasers. And that's why they're not their authentic self. So it's easy to say, just be yourself. But all of a sudden you get a look when you say something in the boardroom and that advice goes right out the window because you want to please your boss. You want to please the other people around you. You don't want to rock the boat. Can you kind of walk us through how you've definitely conquered the not being a people pleaser stage? And like, when did you start not giving a fuck?
Well, so two things. I officially stopped giving, I've been trying to work on my swearing. So for my mom's sake, she asked me to for my New Year's resolution 2023. So she could be floating around in here because she does that sometimes. So I will say I stopped giving Fs. I actually got really into stoicism a couple of years ago. Like folks who know me personally know that I got like really into it. The guy that runs my jujitsu gym started it. We have a meetup group right before the pandemic. It was amazing. Ended up being like basically like group therapy during lockdown. But there is something like thousands of years ago, Greek philosophers were talking about the framework for being a good person. And like one of the things that is very huge in stoicism is something called the dichotomy of control. Definitely Marcus Aurelius, just throwing Epictetus tied with Marcus Aurelius. Sorry, answering the questions as I talk. Favorite Stoic. So one of the things that you'll hear is the dichotomy of control. And this has actually been repackaged. And like, if you ever read The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F, it's like the concept of dichotomy of control from Stoicism. But it's basically caring about what you have control over, which sounds like so basic. But actually, like when you distill it down, all you really have control over is your input, your contribution, how somebody reacts, what somebody thinks about it. You have no control over, so there's no point caring. Like there's really not. Like you could do the exact same thing 5 times, 5 different people have different reactions to you. Why would you care, right? About like why would you waste energy on the reactions when all you could control was like what you put out there in your input, right? So I think that was a big thing. The other thing is that I also think it's completely disingenuous to pretend that I don't care, right? Like we don't do these things like you care, right? Like you could be hurt. Like if I'm cut, don't I bleed kind of thing. Like, yes, right? Yes. But I do think that there is with a lot more age has come like comfort in oneself. And the people pleaser thing, I'm really lucky that I don't actually have that many people, friends, family, but like I don't have a partner, I don't have children. Those are very different considerations when you're talking about the people pleasing, and we have to recognize that. But I do think women are, I don't say notoriously bad, but women put everyone besides themselves first, like everyone. And that I think is a problem, and nobody can fix that but us. So I talk all the time about the rules of the game that are unfair that we have to fix systemically but then we also do professional development because we have to be better players at the game, right? And it's a two-handed thing. And so getting better at not maybe picking the right people to care about is the best way to say it, because I think you're always going to care. It's just a question of picking the people that really matter in terms of caring. And we'll talk later when we do the facilitated networking. I know you didn't mean to kind of like jump to this, but it's a really good kind of like preview. But one of the questions that we always do at our events, at every facilitated networking event that the association has, we always end with this question of, if somebody asked you, what do you need and how can I help? What would your answer be? And one of the reasons I love Steven so much is because like the first time we had a call, he was like, how can I help you? And I was like, oh, did you even know? Like, how did you? But women are terrible about asking for help. Like, we just try to do everything ourselves. And so that's a question that women need to practice asking, because we don't generally do that. I'm going to take a quick time out though and respond to Liat, which is, if you're late joining us, you probably hear me and Steven talking on the stage. And there's tons of people floating around, and there's a big purple love clump. Don't worry about the love clump. If you're sitting there like floating around, you are totally fine. At the end of our presentation, you're going to join one of the groups, and that's when we'll have facilitated networking. So right now, you don't need to worry about the bubbles. Later, we'll explain them. But for right now, just think about if you have questions. Also, I noticed there's some raised hands. We can absolutely call on you and you can ask the question, or you can throw it into the chat, whichever you prefer. But if you raise your hand, we're going to assume that you actually want to speak. I don't think we can bring you on stage, right, Stephen? Only 2 people, I think, can be up at a time. But I think what we could do, we were going to turn, I don't think I can turn on voices now. Can I? Let me see. Right now, guys, if you could, because I'm not in, oh, wait. I can't turn audience voices. Hold on a second. I don't know. Oh, that's not right. Hold on. Sorry, as we kind of figure this out, guys. This is our first time using this platform.
You have it on.
I don't know.
Oh, you have it off now.
Yeah, I can't. I don't think I can turn audience voices on while we're on stage. I wish Antonia was here, but I don't think she is. Oh, wait. Hold on. Wait a minute. Alma, can you hear me out there? Because just because, guys.
Yes. Hello.
Okay, so guys, just be aware. Audience voices on means we can all hear you. So whatever you're doing, just be aware. Right now, everyone can hear everything, and we're all officially in a room together. So whatever embarrassing things you might have in the background, maybe hit pause. But Alma, all you got to do is talk and shout out your question.
So I actually like raised my hand by mistake, but I did want to say the other reason that women are people pleasers is we are judged way more harshly on what we say. Like I always say, we have to be really tough, but really kind. You can't hurt anyone's feelings, but you have to be direct, and you have to be, it's really a very, now I will tell all of the young women out there, it's a little easier as you get older, maybe because you don't care as much, or maybe because they're a little bit afraid of you because you remind them of their mother, but or mother-in-law, worse yet. So, but you do, I mean, that is part of the problem, right? I can't come in and say, what the hell are you people doing? Whereas men, colleagues of mine, can be jerks, right? And everyone just thinks they're showing leadership. So,
you know, I think we were talking about that this morning on the TCAE call, because like very realistically, I think it was Janisha who said, and I just did audience voices off. So if you need to flush your toilet, go now, okay? And I'll come back to the other question in a minute. But we were talking about this because Janisha, like, she hunts down people's profiles. And usually when I do my intro, like you saw, like I say where I worked, and she went and she hunted up like DOJ and FinCEN awards I had gotten. She was going on, and I get very uncomfortable, and I'm not good at taking a compliment. And men don't worry about that. And when I am being assertive or being aggressive, I always pepper in self-deprecating humor, always. And it just makes it more palatable for most people. And Alma is 100% right. women are judged so much more harshly that we're going to do twice the work, right? And look, this is, you know, people of color know exactly what I'm talking about, because, you know, men of color have it easier. Women, like Black women, right? Like they have it the hardest. They have to worry about, like, you know, the woman thing, and then the Black thing, like, whether it's code switching, whether it's being judged, whether it's conscious bias or unconscious bias, like all the things that we have to deal with, all of that stuff is taking a toll and is running in the back of your head as you're thinking about every word that you're saying and how it's going to be taken. So I wish I could say that, oh, I'm just myself and I'm always 100% like saying what I'm not. Because one of the things we talked about this afternoon is yes, we can try to change the rules of the game to make them more fair. But while they're being changed, you kind of have to play the game to win. And that means I self-deprecate a little bit more than I should. And you know what? It is what it is. Like, should I need to? No. Do I do it so that some guy feels better, or some woman, let me be clear, not just men, right? Someone feels less threatened because a woman who just comes up and says, I'm a boss bitch and you should just know that. Some people are going to be a little triggered by that. And I don't know. I'm always a little hesitant to just be 100% myself just in case. And that's sad. And I wish that we lived in a world where that wasn't the case. And if I ever had a kid, especially a daughter, I would want it better for her. But in the meantime, I mean,
can we talk about that? Because there's been a lot of people posting today about, you know, a lot of the trouble that they're having is with other women. It's not just the maid. And I don't want to like be the guy that brings that up, but it is a lot of, I hate to use the word, but like we hear people say cattiness, right? There's a lot of cattiness, especially, and this happens in the Black community too, this kind of crab in the bucket. There's only one woman position open kind of thing. So you got to do whatever it takes to kind of get there. It's hard to help out your fellow woman if you feel like there's only one spot. There's going to only be one spot. How do we kind of get out of this crab in the bucket mentality and create mentorship, create pipeline so that when Amanda can bring up 2 or 3 people through her mentorship to eventually replace her or to join her team, how do we do that without getting catty with this sense of, you know, with this sense of lack, right? We don't feel abundant when we're the minority, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think like Liat makes a really good point that's worth like foot stomping, is that backstabbing and being a douche knows no gender, right? Like some people are just douches, right? Like, and there's, I will say though that we have had networking events all over the world. We were having a UNODC event in Thailand with women from Asia and Africa. And what was horrifying to me is that the single common experience that a lot of us had was that the worst discrimination that we suffered was another woman. Like that the most painful experience that we had was another woman, to Stephen's point, right? And I imagine, I can't speak, like Stephen, you know, you tell me, or, you know, any person of color, I think for women or people of color, that when it's somebody who's in your group, it stings so much worse, right? Like if a white guy is kind of a douche to me, I'm kind of like, well, bless your heart, you are just a product of society, right? Like, especially if they're old, I'm kind of like, oh, like hopefully you'll age out or die at some point and not pass that on to your children, right? I mean, I don't wish them instant death, like not earlier death, just like at some point I feel like time will take care of this, right? But the point being that like when it's somebody in our group, when it's a woman, man, it's like the one woman boss, like my boss's boss that I had, who was just awful, like, and was actually the impetus for me leaving government. I'm ironically grateful to her, because but for her, like, oh, I was comfy in that nest. And having somebody kind of kick you out and force you to fly, right, is kind of a nice thing sometimes. You don't want it, you don't see it coming, and you're literally just like flying to survive. But later you're kind of like, oh, well, with hindsight, I can say that served a purpose. Yeah, no, and Liat, that's a fair point. Like, douchery is douchery, right? Like, I just personally, as a woman who loves supporting other women, for me it stings, right? But to your question, Stephen, the crabs in a bucket thing, I believe, and I'm empathetic and sometimes overly empathetic, and I look at the woman that I worked with, and I know, because she made comments to this effect, that she had to work a lot harder. It was harder for her. She looked at somebody like me at like, well, at my age, like I'd had to do this, right? And there's a scarcity mindset that's kind of like, well, there's only so many opportunities for women. So I have to have them. And I think that's the crabs in a bucket mentality, right? It's like, there's only so much space. There's only so many resources. So I have to climb all over the top of you to get out. And it's so wrong, right? Like, I mean, factually, morally, yes, but also factually, like, there's not a limited number of resources or experiences for women or people of color. Like, if you're intentionally inclusive, there's tons of opportunity to go around, right? And so, like, I think it's a really tough thing. I know this is so basic, but I think you get out of the universe the energy that you get back from the universe the energy that you put out into it. And I think somebody said in the comments, like, oh, karma. I'm a huge believer in karma, right? And so the crabs in a bucket thing, like, you're not going to be able to, I don't know that you can fix those people. You can't make people be better people. It goes back to the dichotomy of control. You have control over your actions, your decision to stay in an environment. If it's toxic, your decision on how to react to how other people treat you is
awesome.
I think
I want to interrupt. I want to give you like
answer.
3 firesides so that we could get into the networking. And I think people want to like definitely join whatever love clump you're a part of to get more gems from you. The one thing how do we get actionable results then? Actually, tell me about the Association for Women in Compliance, because I think one thing that I've seen work is when you're in a room, when you're in a group, when you're in a group of 100 people or a mastermind program or a coaching group, and you have like-minded people where Amanda can step in and say, hey, I want to make this amount. And people are like, okay, I make this amount, I can help you get there. Or, hey, these are some resources to kind of up your income, whether it be money, positions, title. Like, tell me the effect of, creating this non-for-profit to kind of create a safe space for women and men allies to kind of contribute to each other's success.
Yeah, so I found that, and I talked about a little bit about this earlier today, I found that women are terrible at self-promotion, generally. This is a stereotype, but statistically, we tend to be less good at it than men. And it's not our fault. Like, if you think about societal conditioning, we are conditioned to kind of not brag about ourselves, like not necessarily put ourselves out there. There's a lot that we don't think about who we are, about how much we're shaped by society, and all of the kind of like responses and cues that we get every single day as we grow up, that we think there's free will, but realistically, like, we are completely and utterly shaped by the world around us, even who we are as people, right? Especially who we are as people. So when we're talking about like making change, the association tries to do that in 2 ways. One is like changing the rules of the game and trying to make things more fair. And so we work with conference planners to like call out, like, I got an email yesterday from a conference planner in Dubai that was like, hey, you should join this conference. And I was like, you have 46 speakers listed and 2 of them are women. Shame. In what world do you think that this is inclusive to somebody like me? Do you want help finding women speakers? Because this neither looks like the industry and this doesn't help the industry. So I have become so militant in my old age where I am like, oh, hell no. Like, and so the association kind of like actively goes out to work with conferences, try to get more women included, shouts out our members, profiles our members. Like, we're trying to do mentoring circles, we're trying to do podcasts, we're trying to do all these things, because otherwise the profile of women in crypto and blockchain and Web3, very difficult for women to break through. And part of that is because I was on the phone with a publicist, a PR company, a couple weeks ago, and the woman was like, the industry is pay to play. Everything is pay to play. The Oscars are pay to play. And I was like, no, not Best Picture. No, not Best Picture. And she was like, yes, all of that is campaigning and all of that is paying to win. There is so little that's, quote, merit-based now in the world that it is heartbreaking. And a lot of women don't realize that. Like, there are some real success stories in crypto, and I won't necessarily call them out, but some of the most successful people hired a publicist, got a TED Talk, and then launched that into careers from it's not necessarily they're the best, they're not necessarily the smartest, but God, what they're good at is self-promotion, and that's a skill. It is a skill. If you can do it yourself, great. If not, there's an entire industry of PR and publicist people that you can pay to do it for you. And women are like, oh, I'm terrible about bragging about myself. Understandable. I suck at it too. Have a brag buddy. This is the cheapest way to do it. Tag yourselves on LinkedIn and talk about each other. Have somebody else do it. If you have some disposable income, hire a publicist or a PR company to put you forward for things, because this is how the game is played. And we can work to change the rules, but in the meantime, be the Serena, right? Like, be the Serena of your field and spike it in their face. Like, be really good. Like, be the best. Like, I'm just like,
you.
yeah, no, I'm just like, I think it was when I started martial arts training that I got like, so like, no, start punching more people in the face. Stop dancing around and start punching people in the face. Like, I'm not advocating for violence. Somebody's going to go out and say, Amanda told everybody to punch everybody in the face. Do not run around telling people that I said punch people in the face. But we do need to start fighting. I said this afternoon. We have to start fighting smarter and not harder. And I think that's so critical.
I think what you did and what you talked about, and what Susan and Mally did, they're like, if there's something that you don't see or you don't like it, then create something of your own. Like, TCAE can create an event worth of 8 women, 9 women. I think the panel had like 50 people on the panel today. You can pick whoever you want. There's no one telling you what to do. There's no one saying, hey, there should be men here. There should be this. Like, you control the narrative. And I think that's what you've built here. Like, building a nonprofit, similar to starting a content creation business in crypto, is probably not the smartest thing to do, but you get to create your own rules. And that's how you affect change, by then showing people, this is what I've built. You can build it too, or you can kind of join me and help pushing the movement forward. And last question sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Just to add on that, because somebody asked me I've had people ask me 2 questions. The 2 most common questions I get are, why did you leave what you were doing on the Hill and not go to a law firm to make a ton of money? Like, why would you start a nonprofit that makes no money? Like, I don't understand. And I'm like, I know you don't understand, because you're not me, and I don't know your personal life. I just know that I wanted to do something that made me believe in the world again, that I was passionate about, that made me happy. Ergo, fighting for a better inclusive environment in crypto. But the second question I think that I get is, why crypto? Like why an association for women in crypto at a time, especially when and it was pre-FTX, obviously. But like, you're a prosecutor, and crypto kind of seems like, I don't know, we don't know where it'll go. And I tell people, I'm not a crypto enthusiast in the sense that, like, I don't run around telling people invest in crypto. Oh, Doge is going to the moon. I believe that we are, like, cryptocurrency, stable coins, like all of us, we're evolving into the future of digital assets. And if tomorrow everything went to crap, crypto's not disappearing. Ransomware, like, the illicit amount of crypto is a floor that will always exist, because that technology is out there and it's never going away. Even if you ban it, even if every country banned it tomorrow, crypto would still be here. Blockchain analytics would still be here. Compliance, as long as there's exchanges, will still be here, right? And that's a lot of who the association is. It's the women who were either in traditional finance or who think this technology has promise, who are in the industry. They may believe in the technology, but they don't necessarily need to. But being in the industry comes with the challenges of drinking from a fire hose constantly. It moves faster than anything I've ever seen. Wanting to kind of talk with people who know what it's like. I have some women who are just like, I just want to talk with somebody who looks like me at the end of the day. And I just want to find the adults in the room to have conversations with. And you need that safe space. Like, for some people, it's about the building business. For some people, I just want to be around other people that, like, get me. And we needed that. And so between the advocacy and the networking, like, I think those are the 2 things that we're going for. And we're not everything to everyone. I've got some founding members, Maggie Love at SheFi. She is the queen of, like, education and builders and developers. And when a developer or builder comes to me, I'm like, you better be doing SheFi. Have you looked at SheFi? Like, there are so many women's associations that we should be amplifying and, like, all working together. Like, I don't need to be everything to everyone. I serve a very niche thing. I don't do big events. We never have, like, this is probably the biggest event that we will do. Usually we're like 40 to 50, because we want to have intimate, get to know each other, build meaningful relationship experiences. Because that's, to me, the kind of network that helps. And so, yeah, I think I wanted to make sure there was a raised hand. There were 2 raised hands. Do we want to try the voices on again, or what? I will tell people, like, when we turn voices on, which I'm going to warn, you can mute yourself just in case anything's going on back there and you don't want to be heard. But in order for people to like ask questions verbally, we have to turn voices on. So I'm warning everyone, mute yourself now because I'm going to turn audience voices on so that we can hear questions from Christina and Marimer. Okay? Christina, if you can hear me, go with your question.
My apologies. That was a mistake.
Oh, okay, no worries. Marimer, did you have a question?
Not a question, just a comment on the whole, being a minority in this space. It is, the whole thing with the competition. I started in 2021 and I have made so many enemies. People trying to cut me down. It's just been crazy. And I don't, it's like, I mean, is this like common because I'm a female or I'm trying to like see where is it? What the heck? And I'm a nice person. So it's like, I'm just trying to help people. So I'm just trying to understand a lot of these things. Where it's come from, right?
So you know what's funny? I have asked a couple people.
You might want to turn voices off because it.
Oh yeah, good call. Good call, Steve. Hold on one second. Okay, so I have asked a couple people, like to their face, I'm like, you clearly have a problem with me. I would love constructive criticism. And I'm very confrontational about it. Not everyone feels comfortable with that. So I don't advocate that. I just say it works for me. And sometimes people are honest and some people don't have the huevos, to be honest, for lack of a better word. And if that's where they're at, that's fine, right? Generally, if they don't have the huevos, to be honest, I find that they back down a little bit because in my world, sometimes all you have to do is run across the ring as soon as the bell rings and pop somebody in the mouth and begin as you mean to go on. And that sets the tone of the relationship pretty well. And I will tell you, black, white, female, male, that's a universal thing. That's a personality thing. To Liat's point, like douchery is douchery. And those people, it doesn't matter. You just have to do it. But like, I will say, I personally think that the gender thing is very real. Sometimes I think people think something is femininity. And I'm kind of like, in my head, I'm thinking, no, you grate on me. Like, I kind of know what probably they're thinking. And I think that's a self-awareness problem. It's hard to know self-awareness versus discrimination. Having said that, the discrimination is very real. Like I have a founding member, Olayinka Odenira, and she is amazing. She's been planning this conference, International Women of Blockchain. It is incredible. She has picked speakers that the lineup is amazing. And she had a really hard time getting sponsors. And let me freaking tell you, if she was a white male, that thing would be pooling in money. The substantive content that she's put together, the way that she's organized it, there's absolutely no question in my mind that if she was a white man, it would be up there with consensus. But she's a black woman, and we need to be able to have the honest conversation that if it's harder for me, it's infinitely harder for her. And the problem is to me, going back to Stephen's question, how do we change that? We have to be militant about intentionally including and helping those people. The truth is that I help white men when they reach out to me, but in my order of priorities list, women come first. People of color are right up there. Frankly, black women get all of my time because my best friend is a black woman, and having watched her and I since law school and the different paths that we've had, I absolutely took that Harvard test and told her I failed because I'm unconsciously biased towards black people and it's all her fault. I fully admit I am a biased person towards black people because when there's equality, I'll level out. But until then, like, sorry, like it's just because how else do we do it? How else do we fix that problem? This is like when people have the affirmative action debate, and I'm just going to go right into like politically like sensitive. How do you fix it without giving them a benefit that you took from them? How do you fix it without giving some inequality to fix inequality? Like, this is my thing. I am intentionally inclusive to women and people of color because they have been discriminated against and there's not equity. And Catherine Ung today did this beautiful post on equity versus equality and the difference there. And we don't have equity. You can't have equality if people are starting from different points and the path is harder. So if you're Latina, if you're black, if you're a woman, if you're any of these things where somebody looking at you isn't treating you the same from the jump, what the hell? Like, you have to treat them better than the people who get the benefit of the doubt. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I know it's like a not acceptable opinion, but I created the association because we needed to treat women better to get them to a point of equality. They need more equity. Like, I will say the uncomfortable thing in the room. Like, it is like, that's just my personal feelings, which is why all my views on LinkedIn are my own. But I just don't see how we do it any other way.
That's awesome. I won't go down I won't go down the minority. I think you've said it. And I think we have to reach some level of ambition too, right? We can't just, I firmly believe in helping people up, but I also feel like people have to have a certain ambition. Amanda can't go out and start looking for every woman and Black person on LinkedIn and seeing who they can help. They also have to kind of like put their hand up or like seek that help as well. And I think it's always that fine line that's hard to kind of like to boost. And I think women especially have that trouble boosting themselves up to get the necessary help that's being given out. But lastly, as a man, a lot of these conversations today, almost not male bashing, but like I think it's getting the men are taking a big hit, and rightfully so. But if we're trying to be an ally, how do we help? Like, how do we help when it seems like there's so much resentment towards men? You know, a lot of the conversation is not on what the women did. It's like the men are doing this, the men are not inclusive. It's very like anti-men focused. And I know it doesn't seem like that. And I know that's not the intention, but it's just like if you get a room full of a bunch of if you get a room full of Black people, we're probably going to be like, yeah, the 55-year-old white male is going to come out a lot more in that conversation naturally. So how do we help?
No, listen, like I don't think anybody would sit in here as a white male. Maybe if you were like LGBTQ, but if you're a straight white cis male right now, I would be sweating, right? Like, like that would be natural. Like, you feel very attacked. Like, I don't do this. Like, I'm a good person. I am not saying that every straight white cis male is a horrible person. And in fact, I will tell you, when I started the association, the first 4 people to reach out to me and say, how can I help, were white cis males, because they are in fact very cognizant of how bad it is. And some of them have daughters. And those people are incredibly attuned. They look around and they're like, I know this sucks. I once had a guy at the Singapore FinTech Festival Circle event say, it is a sausage fest. How do we fix this? And I was like, if you think it's a sausage fest, imagine how the non-sausages feel, right? Like if you don't like the sausage fest feeling. So I don't want people to walk away thinking that white cis men don't care about this. Like, they do. They just don't necessarily know how to help. And I tell them all the time, intentional inclusion is something that takes work. The reason they call it unconscious bias is because you're not sitting there trying to figure out how to be a douche today. It's years of societal conditioning that has you with neural pathways that you barely have any control over. We do so many things reflexively that we don't even think about. Like even this morning, and I'm going to call out Liat for a minute because like we didn't talk about it, but she said something on the call this afternoon about how we are like feel our feels. And there's a really good book called How Emotions Are Made that actually talks about our feelings are actually not a given. Like, we actually have a lot more control over how we feel about things than the world kind of wants us to think. Like, we can control that, like, to a certain extent. And it's a fascinating subject that like I could spend so much time talking about. But the reason that I mention it is because I do think there's a lot of people out there. There are women who are intentionally horrible to other people. There are white men that aren't intentionally horrible who want to fix things. And these are like very different buckets. But to me, a white guy who wants to try to fix things and has no idea when unconscious bias is having him make some questionable calls is somebody that I can work with. Whereas a woman or a person of color who's being an intentional douche and knows they're a douche, that's tough. Like, that is tough to correct. But you can have discussion. Allyship. I tell people all the time, if you have a panel and there's no men on it, I know some men who refuse to speak on a panel that's all male. Pure allyship. That's saying you need to do better, right? Some guys will recommend women. I frequently, like, if I see like a bunch of white people, I'm like, well, this is a white group. Like, let's maybe we add some color to this panel, because holy Lord, like it looks like a Mormon convention. Sorry to the Mormons, but you know, if you know, you know. I say this to say, like, I can be super offensive sometimes. The people who know me know it comes from like a good place, but the stereotypes and like the jokes will come out, and we are where we are. But I say this to say, like, intentional inclusion is not like a catchphrase. It's an intentional practice, much like stoicism. You have to intentionally practice it. You get an opportunity, you're thinking of a collaboration. Like whenever somebody reaches out to me, I'm like, oh, crypto babes might want to join on this. Women in Crypto Club. What about Crypto Connect? Like Black Women Blockchain Council. Let's loop them in. You have to work to spread opportunity. It's like manure. It does not spread itself. You have to shove it all over the place to get the benefit of the growth. So like being into, like I got invited to a panel. I was like, one of my members is far better. Like there's so much opportunity. The idea that like there's limited opportunity. Trust me, if you put out into the universe opportunity, if you give, like you get like 10 back. Steven, I have a rule. You have to bring kids on to the camera. If the kid is there, you got to bring them on to the camera.
He's out now. He's out. I'm like, close the door. He's like closing it with him inside the room. Amanda, I think we should get into the network. I think everyone's like, we got in the fire hot. So
yes,
you command the networking, and at the end we're going to give away some prizes as well. So I have most people's names here. Hopefully, a lot of them are on the call. They'll receive their prize, or we'll probably reach out to them after.
Awesome. Okay, so here's what's going to happen. I'm not entirely sure how many people are in here.
About 100,
63.
maybe 65 active.
Yeah. I think 63 are in here and active. So that's actually pretty perfect. So here's what I would suggest. Let's try to get into 10 groups of 6. So go to your birth month. All you need to do is hover over one of the months, and you'll see like it has like a join button. Click the join button and you'll get into the group. If all of a sudden it looks like Virgos are swarming, we'll just ask like a couple of you to like move over to another month. But if you see that 6 people are in a group, I would ask that you like just go to another month that looks like it needs 6 people and meet some Geminis and see how it goes. So just try to clump in like 6 groups of 6. And then once you get into those groups, we'll give you the questions. And you don't necessarily, like, if you don't remember, actually, I'll throw the questions in the chat. That's the best way to do it. So clump in 6, and I'll put the questions in the chat while you're clumping. Oh, wait, real quick. Robert, did you have a question? Did you mean to raise your hand? If you did, like, just throw your question in the chat. I saw a raised hand way too late. Okay, no worries. All right. Perfect. Awesome. Okay. All right, so everybody start clumping, and I will put the questions in the chat.
Let me hop off stage.
How do I do? Oh, that didn't work. Okay. There we go. Okay, I'm going to jump off stage.